Some of you know that a couple days ago I was arrested in front of Chicago's Trump Tower during an anti-war protest, protesting the 5-month war against Iran waged by the United States and Israel. The purpose of this film is not to go into the charges or talk about the repression that our whole group faced, because frankly, oftentimes in these cases, the actual issues we were protesting about gets lost in the shuffle. So I'm talking about what I would have said had I been allowed to speak in front of Trump Tower. The United States has lost this war, deservedly so, and it's a good thing that they have lost. And I'll talk about the latter at the end of my remarks here. But the fact that the United States deserved to lose was not just a matter of the fact that the United States started this war, but frankly, the whole 3/4 of a century program of both parties in this country to repress Iran, going back to the end of the Second World War, when FDR was meeting with would-be dictators around the region to basically secure U.S. control of the region's oil. This, of course, has culminated in the genocide against Gaza, at least 70,000 murdered by the Israeli regime with the full support of both parties in the United States, the pogroms that are going on right now in the West Bank, as well as the physical isolation leading to starvation and other needless deprivation that continues in Gaza despite the so-called ceasefire. As I said, it was a good thing that the United States has lost this war, because as we saw with the defeat of the United States in Vietnam, for at least a few years after that defeat, there was something called the Vietnam Syndrome, a reluctance of the United States, because of the pressure of people here domestically, to intervene on the side of dictators and other creeps around the world. So my hope is that with the United States' defeat in Iran, that in the long term at least, there will be a brief period where the United States attempts to control other people's destinies is at least curbed. That said, the history of powers that are in the process of being defeated is that become even more vicious even after they have acknowledged internally that they've lost the war. This is what happened in Vietnam, where as early as 1967 and 68, the United States government knew that it was losing the war, would almost certainly be defeated, and yet you saw some of the most horrific escalation in things like Nixon's Christmas bombing, in terms of Nixon's invasion of Cambodia, which ultimately led to the rise of Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, and 3 million Cambodians being murdered, in addition to all those murdered elsewhere in Southeast Asia. You saw this with the growing defeat of the French in Algeria. Even when they knew that they had lost that war, their barbarity increased manyfold. You saw that with the British in their defeat in East Africa, where their brutality escalated even after they knew that they were going to lose that war. And so it is incumbent upon people in this country to escalate our protests against the United States' wars on other nations, to use whatever democratic norms that are still left to us, such as the right to assemble and protest, and preserve those rights and expand them, which is what we were attempting to do in front of Trump Tower the other day. So I encourage people to get in touch with anti-war organizations, whether ours, the Chicago Committee Against War and Racism, or any others that you choose to join. We are clearly in a position of increased repression against not just anti-war protesters, but people standing up for Palestine, people standing up against ICE, as we see with the Michigan 8 and the Minnesota 15, the Prairie Land defendants down in Texas. So it is incumbent upon us to forge those bonds of solidarity with everyone facing repression, join your local anti-war organizations, and build the kind of protests that will begin to reach larger and larger layers of people, including unions. Some people are looking for salvation in November, And the clear history of that with, for example, the Obama administration and the wars that were started before his tenure show that that is a false hope. We need to oppose both of these parties. They're agreed upon the goal that Trump has of ruling over the so-called Persian Gulf and the whole region of West Asia. What they differ are is only the tactics. And whoever rules this country in 2028, no doubt will continue pushing that imperial project